So by the time we get to book 2, Clay really starts trying to train her on her powers. And so a lot of the book is getting her used to her powers and stuff like that. But the other part of the book is basically what is called Battle for Antillis. Is Evie's now in the Devas galaxy, and they realize that if they're going to defeat the evil overlord Camulus, that they have to at least start rescuing some of the planets in this galaxy. And there's 6 of them. Terran was originally, or Earth was originally part of this galaxy, as to why it's the 7th world. So at this point, they're thinking if they can save at least Antillis and Alderbard, which is the 2nd planet, that they might have some foothold back in their own galaxy to take it back. So as Calais is training her on her own powers, the rest of the resistance starts training to fight battle for Antillis and going to Alderbard and trying to find people to recruit and secret weapons and ships that have been hidden throughout that planet to be able to defeat or at least stop the Camulus forces on Alderbard or on Antillis. And so overall, the end of it is that obviously there's a massive battle on that planet for Antillis. And Evie really comes into her own.
Hey everyone, and welcome. I am Morgan Gist McDonald, founder, CEO of Paper Raven Books, and I have with us today a super special guest. She is right in the middle of releasing an entire series, the 7th World series, and today is the release of book 2, Battle for Antillis. Angie McMillan, thank you for being here.
Hi, thanks, Morgan. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited. Your story is so cool, Angie, and we'll get to that a little bit later, but you're a psychologist, you're a college instructor, you're writing at night, and you're really releasing this series on the margins of life, which I think a lot of people find really interesting. And so this is book 2, and maybe can you give us like a little preview of what happened in book 1 and set us up for book 2?
Yeah, so you meet Evie when she's about 14 years old, and her parents had passed away, so she's an orphan, and she's living in a residential home. And she has these odd dreams that just make her feel like there's more to them than that. But, you know, she's a 14-year-old girl. She just doesn't believe them, but they're just really vivid and intense dreams. So she ends up getting adopted by this really wonderful couple, David and Ruby. And so they take her in and they start raising her, and she just lives this normal life, but these dreams just keep getting more and more intense. And secretly, what she doesn't realize is David and Ruby are part of this thing called the Order, or the Keeper's Order. And they have been recruited by the Order to actually adopt her and protect her. However, they're not given a whole lot of information about her either. And David, her adoptive father, gets a letter one day saying, take the girl to Ireland. And so he doesn't really know what this is, but he ends up taking her to Ireland. And while they're there, it just seems there's a lot of missing information. Then boom, all of a sudden, Evie's in this pub with David and Ruby, and she passes out when she sees this old woman walk in. And the next thing she knows, she starts having dreams of this woman, and this woman tells her to meet her. And so they just take this leap of faith and they go and meet this woman called Morena. And Morena happens to be a descendant of Magnus. And what little does she know is Evie comes from this ancient bloodline from another galaxy, Devas galaxy, where Magnus is hidden Terran, or Earth, from this galaxy to stop his evil brother from destroying them. And so basically the first book is just this adventure of Evie just figuring out who she is, who her powers are, her bloodline, where she comes from. And she ends up going into dream states and meeting other people from the Devas galaxy. And then all of a sudden, one day they unlock all these treasures that Magnus left her on Earth. And the next thing she knows, she's actually in this other galaxy. And she meets all these people. She meets a love interest, Declan. She meets the leader of the resistance called Calais. And all these different people, her best friend, Amelia. She starts meeting all these people, and she just really starts to find out, not only is she from this ancient bloodline, but she also has innate powers where she can manipulate elements. So basically, that's where book 1 kind of leads you. She figures out who she is, where she's coming from, her past, and she really doesn't know anything about her powers or anything. And so you kind of leave off on book 1, where Calais, who is this leader of the resistance, telling her this is where it all begins.
So if you haven't read book 1, no problem. Like, you know, we've got a link next to this video. It's going to take you to book 2, but book 1 will be listed right next to it. Okay, so we're all teed up, and we're like, you know, yeah. Evie has powers, and yeah. Like this is the beginning of it all. Okay, book 2. Where do we pick up with Evie and Magnus?
So So Magnus is already passed. He's already gone, but he's leaving her hints throughout the galaxy, throughout her dreams, and throughout special things that she finds, these scrolls that she finds that at first she can't read, but it starts to become easier for her to understand them. So by the time we get to book 2, Clay really starts trying to train her on her powers. And so a lot of the book is getting her used to her powers and stuff like that. But the other part of the book is basically what's called Battle for Antillis, is Evie is now in the Devas galaxy. And they realize that if they're going to defeat the evil overlord Camulus, that they have to at least start rescuing some of the planets in this galaxy. And there's 6 of them. Terran was originally, or Earth was originally part of this galaxy, as to why it's the 7th world. So at this point, they're thinking if they can save at least Antillis and Alderbard, which is the 2nd planet, that they might have some foothold back in their own galaxy to take it back. So as Clay is training her on her own powers, the rest of the resistance starts training to fight Battle for Antillis and going to Alderbard and trying to find people to recruit and secret weapons and ships that have been hidden throughout that planet to be able to defeat or at least stop the Camulus forces on Alderbard or on Antillis. And so overall, the end of it is that obviously there's a massive battle on that planet for Antillis. And Evie really comes into her own. By the time we get to the 2nd book, we reach her 18th birthday, and she wakes up on her 18th birthday. And that is the day she ends up battling for the whole planet. And powers and her elementals just start to just really come in with all the information she's gathered and all the training she's gathered. So yeah.
So exciting. So good. So you're giving us little bits of flavor here and there. There's some sci-fi, there's some adventure, there's, you mentioned a little bit of love interest. How would you, like if someone says, okay, Angie, I like this kind of book, would I like, Battle for Antillis or the 7th World series? What kinds of books do you think your readers might like?
Oh gosh, fantasy. Growing up as a kid, I was super into C.S. Lewis or Philip Pullman doing The Golden Compass. Just these ideas of these extra trips that can lead you to extra fantasy worlds. Like I loved the idea of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, that there was a secret panel that led to a secret world, right? I loved that with Laura Balakwa, she finds out like the dust is connecting to something unseen, right? So all of these ideas that there's this unseen power, these unseen worlds that us as humans we dream about, but oh my gosh, we can actually tap into them somehow. And so that was kind of like, as a kid growing up, I always, fantasized about that. And then with it being in a distant galaxy, I was a huge Star Wars nerd. So I really wanted to make it like kind of a space opera. So a lot of the things are they're traveling between worlds on star trails. They find Devas ships that make them like travel through different planets and through star vortexes and stuff. And so that kind of aspect, just really integrating that idea of space and different worlds. And then when I was young, I just loved the idea of powers, anything with somebody having powers, right? So if anybody could have a power, like that was it for me.
Amazing. So if you like Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, The Golden Compass, Star Wars, I mean, I'm also thinking like Brandon Sanderson has some like powers.
Oh gosh, yes.
Too.
His Mistborn series definitely got me. Yeah.
Totally. So if that's your vibe.
Tad Williams was a huge fan of mine. The Dragonbone series was huge. I loved that as a kid. So yeah, probably not as intricate or detailed of a writer as he is, or Brandon Sanderson, but definitely like kind of inspirational.
Yeah, well, and I think that's the fun part about your books is that they are a little bit more approachable. So if we don't really, like the 50 different characters and all the nuances, but we want a really great page turning adventure. Evie is so fun because we meet her at a young age, like 14, and now we're getting to, journey with her, and she's 18 and now in book 2. And of course, she's going to continue growing and changing and evolving over her lifetime. It's really fun to be with younger characters who are finding out whole new worlds and new powers. And it's super approachable. So Angie, what kind of, would you classify this as kind of young adultish or new adultish?
Yep. Middle grade, young adult. Yeah. My target audience, being one of those little girls who was just kind of nose in the book, always in her fantasy world, always head in the clouds type thing. I just really wanted to write something for kids to grow into. They might start off in like middle school and grow into it as they grow into Evie, as Evie does too. It's a more simplistic form of writing because I just wanted to really attract that younger crowd as they move forward and just really, catch that kid whose nose is in the book and wants to have a way to go into a different place.
Love it. Well, I love young adult books. I think a
Yeah.
lot of us, in our 30s and 40s, are like, actually, I really like young adult
Yeah.
books. And it's fun because we can share it. Like, I'm thinking like my daughter is, right in that 12-year-old age
Yep.
and loves books like this. So, we're reading these together.
Yeah.
And that's really fun for, moms and daughters, aunts and nieces, grandparents. Like, it kind of bridges that generation and makes it like a really fun experience. So if you're right there with us and you're thinking, this is exactly the kind of book I want to check out, the good news is you can grab book 2 for free today. If you go to paperavenbooks.com/Battle of Antillis, and you can catch that link right next to this video. It'll take you over to Amazon. You'll see that the ebook is free today. Go ahead and load it up on your Kindle while you're here, while you're thinking about it. You can also check out book 1. And the good news is this series is going to continue. So Angie's going to keep dropping the next book and the next book and the next book. So it's a good one to go ahead and jump into while we're here and while we're talking about it. And you get to be kind of like first in on the series and get into book 2 this weekend. Angie, is there anything else that you want to share with folks? I mean, I guess something that I was curious about from maybe the perspective of people who like writing, I mentioned that this is not your full-time gig currently. Like you have a day job, you're a psychologist, you're a university instructor. What is your writing life like?
Well, it's really interesting because when I was first decided to write this, I've always had an active imagination. You can actually see my board back there with all my ideas. That's just one of many that's scattered throughout my house. And I'd always just write these ideas. And I was actually in the middle of writing a dissertation. And so my head was just stuck in this academic world. And I felt like I was drowning, and felt like I was losing a piece of that little girl, a piece of that person who I always was. And so I just decided one day to just start writing this. I really enjoy it. It was definitely a different experience for me to go from academic writing to fantasy writing. Definitely a journey. I remember my first draft came back covered in red vomit, saying it was too narrative and I needed to have more dialogue and, stuff like that. And I was like, okay, makes sense, right? So I just really took the opportunity to learn that this is very different type of writing. The academic world is very different from the fantasy world. And I just really enjoy it because it gives me an opportunity to express myself. It gives me my husband thinks it's so funny because I tell him whenever I'm writing, he says, I look so happy. And it's like my personal journal. It's like it's my way to just get out what's in here and just like escapism to my personal extent. Right. And even if it never becomes anything, it's just that I told him, I was like, one day, if it gets into the hands of one little 14-year-old girl somewhere, and I inspire her or her granddaughter, doesn't matter. Just to have somebody out there, just to allow myself to have that freedom, that creative energy.
I love that image of like you writing and your husband like catching you in the doorway. Just like, oh, she looks so happy. That's the best, right? I mean, like that's when you know that you're willing to go like into the imagination. You're really with your characters, like they're real people, and it's like you're just spending time with them, and it's
right.
Really fun. You can feel it from the reader's side. I don't love the term labor of love, but it was like it was a project of love, right?
Yeah.
And so it really comes through. It's just such a fun book. If you guys are looking for your next read, you love adventure, you love sci-fi, you love coming of age characters, you love an awesome female protagonist who you're going to totally fall in love with as she finds her powers. This is it. Grab your daughter, your niece, your granddaughter, your friend and dive in. Go to paperavenbooks.com/Battle for Antillis, and that is linked up next to this video. Any last words, Angie, for your readers as they dive into book 2?
No, just enjoy. I love that when the idea with fantasy is when you read the book, you get to create your own world too. You get to create your own imagination. So even though I wrote the words, like I'm always so glad for people to, how it comes to fruition for them. So just enjoy and have fun with it. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, y'all enjoy, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.